of conservative publications were giving Lena Dunham a hard time after she disclosed in her new book that she had done some questionable things with her sister when she was as young as 7 years old. Now, in one portion of her book, she talked about how when her sister was 1 year old and she was 7 years old, she examined her vagina, and then later on, as she grew up a little bit, she talked about how she would, try to bribe her sister for affection. She wanted to kiss her sister on the lips. She wanted to kind of explore and, do things that sound really, really questionable if someone is in their late 20s or early 30s. But again, in the context of her book, she was a kid. Now, we gave our analysis of it, but it's really important to hear from someone who's actually a psychotherapist. And thankfully, Gawker did speak to a psychotherapist by the name of Sam Rubenstein. And he kind of shared his thoughts on the story based on what he read in the book. So let me tell you what he wrote, or what he said to Gawker. He said, if I had a quarter for every kid in that age demographic that touched somebody else out of curiosity, I'd be a rich man. I think that's a natural part of development and curiosity. There's no sense of control or shame or harm in Dunham's writing. It would be really hard to construe it that way. So he starts off by saying that. So again, it was kind of a confirmation of what we already felt or thought. The age and that demographic is usually a curious one, and they usually explore things in a non-sexual way.
So a lot of people have spoken out about this now, including her sister, who was, according to some, the victim of that abuse. She said, "What are you talking about? You're nuts. That's not how I perceived it at all. Let alone the fact that she maybe perhaps didn't even perceive it or remember perceiving it, because at one point she was like 1 year old, right?" But in this case, he has an interesting perspective, not because just analyzing somebody from afar gives you any kind of great advantage in figuring them out, but in having the perspective of gone through a lot of these different cases, right? Seeing the real cases, the serious cases, and just dealing with a lot of kids and what they normally do. He knows what a lot of us don't know, right? What's normal, what's not normal, what happens, what doesn't happen, what's predatory, and what's just a 7-year-old.
Yeah, look, my best friend is actually a social worker. She got her master's in social work, and she deals with situations like this on a regular basis. She's not as experienced as this psychotherapist is, but when she heard about the story and when she read those passages from Lena Dunham's book, she was like, look, this is not sibling sexual assault. At that age, you explore in certain ways, and look, again, it's all about context, and she was in an age group where that kind of stuff happens, I just wish she hadn't written about it, because that's probably the part that's
right now, she finally came out. She was super mad about this interpretation, of course. But she finally came out and said that line about how this is how a suburban predator would act. She was obviously kidding, right? But she seemed to be saying, like, I wish I hadn't said it that way, which is exactly what we said on the show yesterday.
Absolutely. So let me give you more from the therapist. He says, I remember I made my brother touch like hot shit or made him eat dog food. Are those things abusive? Yes, but not in the context of a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old. I think context is a huge issue here. If you want to get very psychological, in Freud's psychosexual stages, Dunham's age is consistent with the latency stage, wherein children of that age are almost degenderized and desexualized. That's even more evidence of why there would be no sexual connotation to it.
Yeah. Look, I wouldn't have made your brother eat that shit. That sounds kind of nasty.
Right.
But to that point, would you ever arrest a 5-year-old or a 7-year-old for hitting another kid?
I mean, I think about...
No, it's assault. It's assault.
Yeah.
Right? And if you said, well, if a 48-year-old hit a 3-year-old, you would obviously arrest them, right? But if a 7-year-old hits a 5-year-old, they're just brothers. Right?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think about my relationship with my brother growing up, and although, as far as I know, there wasn't any type of weird, genitalia exploration or anything like that, I used to beat the crap out of my little brother. I mean, to the point where he was crying, and I would have to bribe him with Gatorade for him to stop crying and not go to my mom. Right?
Jesus.
Yeah.
Okay, there's something little wrong with you.
I'm sorry I missed this yesterday, but the thing is you see the difference that you had in you saying you beat the shit out of your brother and you had to keep him from going to your mom because your mom might do something about it. Your mom might tell you, hey, Anna, that's wrong. You don't beat on someone, because as you grow up, this is going to be a lot more serious. Right. Because when you age, you have to learn things. The problem with this was how she, again, you guys talked about how she worded the whole thing, saying, I didn't mean to, but I shouldn't have worded it that way with the sexual predator thing. Because by the way, that triggers some people. Let's keep it real. And probably some of the predators as well, like, sounds great. It turns it it's a little freaky, and it's kind of dark. And her trying to be funny, maybe she missed that point, fine, I get it. But it seems that her mother or father, I'm going off her excerpts, never really stopped her from doing these things, so she never had any barriers. She talked about how she never had any barriers with her sister, therefore then later she masturbated next to her. And then, this is in teenage years. And then after that, she outed her to her mother because she could never keep her own secret, so she had no reason to think her sister should have a secret. It was just a constant mistreatment of her little sister. And as an adult, again, just in the excerpts, maybe she's just trying to be funny and it's surface. But she's kind of like, I'm supposed to spread her shit open. That's weird, dude, because you were never told that's wrong. Even if you did it then, you should know now that was wrong. You know now it was wrong to hit your brother. Would you jump on your brother and start beating the shit out of him? No, because you're an adult. So it's just weird that she was never reined in.
I don't think she's doing these things now as an adult. You know,
if she jumps on her sister and opens things up, then we got an issue.
Right, but she's remembering them like it's a fond memory. It's odd. That's what I'm saying.
The part that I agree with JR on is, when you look at it in its totality, it appears that there were not a lot of boundaries in the Dunham household.
Right.
Right.
Definitely.
So, I mean, given that context, I got kids, I might have been like, let's lay off that stuff, right? Let's just figure out a different way to play. Let's go, hey, Spider-Man! Right? So I'm with you, JR, but you're certainly not going to hold her responsible for what she did as a 7-year-old.
No, that's what I'm saying. I'm not holding her responsible for those actions as a 7-year-old. I'm holding her responsible as an adult, remembering those actions and apparently not having any sense that those were wrong. She thinks they were fine. That's why she continued to do more and more, not lethal, but disregarding of her sister's feelings and human rights throughout her childhood. Now, her sister can be fine with it. I'm glad she is. Some people end up with what we would call sexual problems or they were sexually abused and they came out fine. Some people do, some people don't. So this case of her sister coming out fine, okay, I'm glad she did. So I'm not trying to prosecute her. That's the thing. I feel like we're narrowing in on just prosecuting her. You gonna prosecute a 5-year-old? No, that's not what we're saying. She needs to realize what happened, because this is kind of almost enabling or promoting this kind of act, and you shouldn't do it.
That's interesting.
Yeah. And also, I think that another part of it that's interesting is how far do you let children go when it comes to exploring in certain ways, right? So like you have the right-wing group that will say, oh my God, like as soon as a kid touches his or her genitalia, oh my God, it's masturbation, stop them. But that's actually part of them growing up and learning about themselves. So like, I don't know where you draw the line. And I don't know. I'm not a professional, so it's a difficult thing to really comment on.
And it seems, last thing, I'm sorry, I'm gonna shut up. It seems she's figuring it out now. She's finally catching some responsibility for these things that she said, because she apparently didn't think that it was a bad thing to say. And she's catching heat, and it seems like she's figuring it out now. Yeah. I don't know if it's for real or not, but
she is like the epitome of not knowing boundaries. And that goes to everything that she does, her show, her book, things that she wears in public. I mean, it's just what Lena Dunham does.
But you know what, JR, the counterpoint to that is, apparently it worked. She's rich, she's famous, she's successful. So maybe not setting boundaries is the right way to go.